My name is Hassan الکاتب. I'm 26 years old. I was born in Iran in 1987. As a young boy, I came to the UK in 1990. And since then, as I've grown up here in the West, I've always thought about what I wanted to do. I thought about where I was going to work. And it was when I was 16, 17 that I finally knew that I was going to go into the media, and that the media and television was a very important place to go into, and a career path which I thought was very much suited to me, myself. And then afterwards I went to college and university, and I studied 5 years of media and television. And then after that I started to work in various media places and news channels. And it's been 6 years, and alhamdulillah, I've been working in the media, and I've done a lot, and I've achieved a lot, and I've been to many places, and I've made a lot of documentaries. And now I can say I'm a documentary filmmaker, a well-established documentary filmmaker, and also a news reporter and correspondent. And I've been traveling to many different countries in North Africa, in the Middle East, Europe, to cover events and news in those countries. Well, first of all, I think with many people who are living in the West, especially in London, there's a lot of competition. It's a big city, and you really need to know and really to plan out what you will do and how to stand out, how to excel in your career path. And of course, as I was growing up, I didn't really do that well, as well as I would have liked in my studies. And there was a point where I had no idea what to do. I didn't know what to become. I didn't know what exactly I would be working as. And one of the many things that Allah, alhamdulillah, has helped me with is blessed me with a really good family. And of course my parents encouraged me. They told me to try and look at different avenues, and look at, for instance, the media, look at television. It was very important. There's a lot of Islamophobia in the media, and I think we Muslims have an obligation and a duty to try and show Islam how it is in its truest form, and that it's a beautiful religion. And this spurred me on as well, because although on the one hand I thought about my career, but also on the other hand I thought about Islam and what I could do as a Muslim to try and show this faith to be a beautiful religion as it is. So this with this dual thing, I had a big spur in my life, and if you like, a goal, and I had if you like something to try and achieve. So what I set about learning in college and in university, and I got, mashallah, very good grades. I got top grades in college, and I also did very well in university, got a lot of experience. And then after that I started working, and when I started working I realized how important it was, firstly, for the parents to encourage their children, especially when they are teenagers, because this is the age when parents really need to try and never give up hope on their children, even if the children have not done as well as they should have done, or even if the children are not in a particular area or field that their parents may have wanted them to be in. So I think it's important that parents should never give up on their children, and to keep encouraging them, and also to try and guide them, because they have also experienced many things which their children have never experienced before. They're also very caring about their children. They also want the best for their children, and that is why it's important as well for the children to listen to their parents, because parents can be a source of guide. In my own spare time as well, in addition to my work that I've been doing over the many years, I've also tried and help the community, the Muslim community, in various charitable projects. There is a lot of good charities out there, organizations who are trying to help the Muslims in various parts of the world. And I've used my own skills, and I've used my own expertise in the media, for instance, and in television, to try and help these organizations and charities to try and help them in order for them to succeed in their own projects and their own campaigns. So, and that's one aspect. And other aspects, of course, is to try and help the community, try and help the youth by doing documentaries, for instance, films in which I have produced, and they are very specific. They have a specific target audience, and I've had many good feedback from youth and from Muslims who have watched my documentaries and who have said, for instance, I'll quote you with what one person said when he watched one of my documentaries. He said, "Wow, I feel so special and proud to be a Muslim because of a documentary that I made." And I showed the spiritual side of things. And I made another documentary about Islam, introducing Islam. This was a documentary that I made in cooperation with a mosque in London, and they had told me to come and edit a documentary, and I helped edit that documentary. And when it was compiled, it was also shown in various events, and people started to learn more about Islam. And now they're showing this documentary to people who come to the mosque, who want to learn about Islam, to new Muslims who have just embraced Islam to learn more about their faith, and also to maybe Muslims who have probably maybe lost their faith or are trying to understand more about Islam. And this is a very good documentary to make them understand the basics of Islam, and from that documentary they could go learn more about Islam. I think one of the best ways to motivate people, Muslims in our community, is to obviously tell them what God says in the Quran, and He says that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was the greatest example for us to follow, uswatun hasanatan. So and when we see, for instance, what the Prophet went through, and how he struggled in his life, it gives you an inspiration to try and get through the struggles, everyday struggles that you go through with your own life. And of course, because he was the greatest example, and because him and the Ahlul Bayt devoted themselves to God, they were remembered because of their sacrifices that they did for God, and they wanted all of us to learn from their own sacrifices. They wanted to show us the way, and Islam is a guide, and we need to also teach our kids, our future generations, that how they sacrificed themselves, what they went through, and this gives us a hope in our own lives, because they faced much more bigger tests and trials than we will ever experience. They were the ones who were the guiding lights of Islam, and this is something that we need to learn from, and learning from them is, as Allah says, they are the best example, and Rasulullah was the best example for us to learn from. And I think teaching them more about the history of Islam, the Prophet's seerah, the Quran, and the meanings of the Quran, will we truly understand the treasures of Islam. I think religion is a very important factor for anyone, and especially for Muslims who have Islam. God is a very important factor in everyone's lives. And Islam is a religion for all of mankind, and in every era, in every place of the world. And I think it really helped me to establish myself in society, in the community, and in the world, the whole world as a whole. I remember when I was, praying to God. I kept praying to God, and I was, telling Him, I wanted certain things, and I wanted to achieve certain things and certain goals. And every time I would pray, I can see those things being done. And by the grace of Allah, He was accepting my prayers. Everything I had prayed for, Allah was, giving me. So it's, prayers are also very important. You can't. This is one aspect that you cannot forget or cannot neglect. And Allah, there's actually a very good saying that do your best and God will do the rest. Pray but hammer away. So in the same time you're also devoting yourself to God, you're also doing as best as you can, and you leave the rest to Allah in the hope that He will keep making you succeed. And I think in my own life, just to give you an example, I was always studying hard, working hard, and when I would, for instance, try and give my CV to a certain company, or when I would apply to a certain position, I would apply, and I would do my best to try and get that position. But at the same time, I would be praying in order for Allah to grant me that position. And alhamdulillah, He did, and he did manage to grant me that position in where I am now. Well, I think when I was young, you know, I think like a lot of young people growing up in London, for instance, I would always think about being a footballer, because football was something I was always interested in. I always thought about, I always used to play football, and I used to play, you know, watch it as well on the TV. You know, so when I was young, especially when I was 10, 11, 12 years old especially, I always used to think about football and probably becoming a footballer, because this was something I was very passionate about. But as you grow older, as you become 14 and 15, and you start to understand that you know, you've got to make sure you succeed in your studies, because after you finish your studies, you're out there in the world of work. You have to try and earn a living. You have to, you know, in the future then, you know, have your own family and you know, sustain that family. So as I was growing up, I started to understand this. And when I was, you know, 15, 16, and 17, I started to not only think about my future and what I would do and what I would study, but also how I would sustain myself, where I would go and work, and how I can make a living, and also how I can maybe, you know, help a family in the future. So in doing so, I also got closer to Allah. And alhamdulillah, because every time I thought about my future, I always thought about trying not only just to think of, you know, how I can feed myself, but also how I can serve the community and serve society. Because I also thought about my responsibilities as a Muslim who is living in this society, who is living in this you know, country, what I can do for the people here and also for people elsewhere in the world. So it was important for me not just to think about myself, but to think of everyone else in the society. And that's why, you know, Islam played a vital role in shaping my own actions, you know, and to get me closer to Allah. I think when I was in university, I always thought of getting a career in the media and in television. And alhamdulillah, when I did that, I started to have more goals, and I tried to achieve more things in life. So every time I would step up, you know, ever since I left high school, then I went to college, and then I went to university, I kept seeing higher targets that I wanted to achieve. You know, during these past few years, as I started to work, I've achieved many things which I wanted to when I was at university, for instance. I've been working in a TV channel. That was one thing. I've made many documentaries which I always wanted to do, and I have done, alhamdulillah. And one of the other things I've also wanted to do is to not only help the community in doing, you know, things you know, on the side as well, but also to try and get closer to God, because no matter how many things you achieve in this world, they will come to nothing if you've not done anything to devote yourself to God and Islam. And one of the greatest, you know, feelings that I've ever had was when I was in Hajj. I went to Hajj when I was 24 years of age. There I was, you know, felt close to God than I have ever done before. It was there when I felt, you know, really, you know, at peace with myself. We prayed together and in all at the same place, and we even slept under the sky. Everyone was at the same place. So we did, you know, everything together, and this is where I really, you know, felt the spiritual nourishment in my life. And this is something important that Muslims in the West should understand, that there is a lot of demands on them, especially working in the city. You know, it could be very routine and 24/7, and there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of things to get done, and you can get caught up in the world of work, and you can forget about, you know, the other important aspects, or the real spiritual aspects of Islam. And I think it's important that they don't neglect that, and that they would remember to try and, you know, to go on pilgrimage, because it will, you know, strengthen their iman and strengthen their resolve and give them a guide for their future. And also, one of my other great achievements that I made was make a documentary when I went to Iraq in 2005 and 6. I went there with my family to see my relatives, my aunties and my cousins, and also Kerbala is my own hometown. It's the place where both my parents were born. And I did a documentary about the people's, you know, experiences in Kerbala and their life and their daily life in Kerbala. So when I came back to the UK, I put together a documentary, a 25-minute documentary called A Day in Kerbala. And in that documentary, I also dedicate a special part to Imam Hussein, because Imam Hussein and Abbas as well, in Kerbala, peace be upon them, of course, is what makes Kerbala famous today. Their sacrifices and their struggles for the sake of God is what led them to be where they are now, remembered and famous, and what makes millions of people from all over the world come to Kerbala and to commemorate Imam Hussein's martyrdom. And this is what makes Kerbala so special. And I dedicated that, a brief story of Imam Hussein's legacy in my documentary. And alhamdulillah, when I had people watch my documentary, and I had my auntie, for instance, when she watched it, she was crying when she heard about the story, about the brief, history of Imam Hussein, when she heard the qasida of Imam Hussein, and that, brought tears to her eyes. And this was, the feedback that I was getting from when people watched my documentary. And just imagine, I only touched briefly about Imam Hussein's story, but imagine if I went into deeper into his story, what kind of reaction people would have had then. So I think it was one of my great achievements.
And here are the shrines of Abbas and the Prophet Muhammad's grandson, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They died fighting for the cause of justice and will forever be remembered for their phenomenal courage and sacrifice. Muslims around the world commemorate the day of Ashura, and where better but to come here.
Of course, working in the media, there's so many opportunities. Now we have YouTube and other facilities online, which people can try and make videos and also try and influence public opinion, in a good way. And that's what I think we as Muslims should be doing. I think we should remember that our actions are accountable for. We should try and do things which are good for everyone, for ourselves and for everyone else. And this is something which I would hope to achieve further in the future. One of my childhood, role models when I was growing up, I remember my father gave me, the film The Message by Mustafa Aqad. He made this film about the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the 1970s, and this is the most watched film in the whole of the Islamic world. It is one of the most successful films, and people all over the Muslim world have watched this many times, and I myself have watched it countless number of times, and it really strengthened my iman. It really strengthened my faith in God and Islam as I was growing up. And that was, right now, as I have been, working, I really hope to do something in the future, whether it be a film or a documentary or a video, even if it's a short video, something that will transform people's lives, get them closer to Allah. This is something that I would really hope to do one day, something that will be distributed right around the world. Millions and millions of people would watch it. Muslims would watch this, generation after generation. They would watch something that would really strengthen their faith in Islam, that would be, something that would really serve the Muslim Ummah. So this is something that I would really hope to achieve in the future. And if I do that, I would really feel that I fulfilled, a great thing. My advice to Muslims living in the West who are young and also reaching adulthood, my sincere advice to them is that they should always remember Allah and think of Allah first and foremost, and keep Islam in their hearts as strongly as they can, and never to give up hope. There's a lot of challenges that Muslims face, but they are also opportunities for us. No matter what we see, whether it's in the media or anywhere else, these are just opportunities for us to try and address, to try and to get through, and inshallah we will succeed. And Allah does say in the Quran, whoever obviously fights in his cause will be victorious. So it's very important for us to remember Islam, to read the Quran, of course, and to learn from the lives of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt as well, because they were great role models for all of us to follow. And I think it's also important for them to try and think about what they can do for others, whether it be in this country or anywhere else in the world, because there's a lot of people who are needy. We are, alhamdulillah, living in a society where we can achieve a lot. We can get a good education here. There's many things, many services that we can benefit from, and I think we can use this particular platform by living in the West, that we can help other people. There are many other people in the Middle East and elsewhere who do need our help, who do need our services. So we have to always remember them and what we can do to help them, in addition to our own lives and how we can try and succeed in our own lives. But very importantly, prayer is a very important factor in helping you succeed. And Allah says in Surah Al-Mu'minun, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. So Allah, mentions salah right after He says the mu'minun are the successful ones, and so that's why it's important for us to establish our prayers, to make sure that we do all the other stuff that Allah mentions in the Quran, which are important for us to succeed in this world and in the hereafter. And that's the reason why we're here. The reason why the purpose of our own lives to be here is to get through the many tests and the trials and tribulations of life. Allah says as well in the Quran, He's created death and life. He's created us here in this world just to see who out of all of us will do the best deeds. And amal salihat is something which is also emphasized in the Quran. So this is something we can't neglect, and we should always remember to do, even if we have strong iman. I would like to say to the viewers who are watching this, and I hope they have benefited from what I've said, and I hope this has spurred them on to try and excel in their own fields, no matter what it is, whether you're a dentist or a doctor or an engineer, whatever field you're in. Remember that you could do a lot, to serve, everyone else, to serve the people in need, and to also try and excel in your field. And I think that's important, not just to, think about being second rate, but try to be the best in what you do. And this is something which, is important for us as Muslims, because we have to try and get through the many challenges that we face at the moment. And I really sincerely hope that people remember Allah, read the Quran, and keep Islam in their hearts as much as they can, because Allah says, وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. Remember Allah as much as you can, so that you can succeed. And it's a very clear path. Islam is a beautiful religion, something that He has blessed you with, the greatest blessing that you will ever have in the world. So keep this dear, because it will make you succeed in this life and the hereafter.